Hello everyone and welcome back to the session. I hope everyone is doing well. Just confirm quickly if you're able to actually hear me. Is my audio coming through, guys? Quickly, if someone can confirm on the chat. Okay, that's great. So welcome everyone. Welcome to the 15-minute Friday session by AWS User Group Hyderabad. We are going to do quick 15-minute sessions, which includes demos. So let's get started with today's session. Okay, everyone, just to give you a quick introduction about myself, my name is Faisal Khan. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called ecom.in. What we do is we do digital transformation into the AWS cloud. I'm also an AWS community builder, and I'm a certified AWS solutions architect, and I also happen to be the lead for the AWS Hyderabad user group. So once again, thank you for joining in, and let's take a quick look at what we're going to cover today. Okay, so we are going to do 15-minute Fridays, which is about getting you interested in areas of AWS that you have so far not discovered or that might not have come across for yourself. We're going to do quick demos and walk through of those steps on how you can get them done. I'm also going to give you some documentation or basically kind of the same steps on how you can perform it yourself. And I'll also refer you to some sessions that we have along with our user group, as well as other user groups that are conducting similar sessions on IoT. Okay, so let's get started with the basics before we go into the demo, which is just understanding what is IoT. Internet of Things, and here the things can be anything, literally anything. But of course, that thing has to have some kind of logic that it can run, like a microcontroller, which can actually run logic and perform actions. The idea here is to have devices that you can control remotely from anywhere, whether that be, actually performing actions like we're going to see today in terms of using lights or something like that. Or whether it is, monitoring, let's say something like soil temperature, or let's say, understanding where a particular truck is, for example, in your delivery fleet. So this can be whether it is at work, whether it's within community, like maybe tracking buses to understand, where they are and when you can actually get to the actual bus stop in order to get the bus. So those are ideas that you can work on when you talk about IoT. And of course, at the home, we already have things like smart bulbs where you can actually remotely turn it off and on. So we're going to work on something like that today. Okay, so when we talk about how all of this comes together, we have the IoT devices or the things on one side, and then we have the AWS IoT service, which allows you to actually use existing AWS services in order to perform actions on the devices themselves, or maybe even remotely collect data about what's happening with that device. So that's kind of what AWS gives you in AWS IoT. So AWS has a whole full stack that's available for you when you're doing IoT. This can be anything from data services to which contains things like analytics, and then you have the actual control plane, which is like the message brokers like MQTT, etc. Then you actually have device software, which is things like IoT Greengrass, where you can actually implement that actual software on your IoT device. What we're going to look at today is one part of this, which is the AWS IoT Core. So this is kind of the original IoT service, so to speak. So this actually gives you the basic tools in order to get started with using an IoT device. So what are we going to do today? So we're going to do a demo setup on AWS IoT Core, which includes something called an ESP32 Micro Controller, which I'll show you in a second. And as well as we're going to use the AWS IoT Core service in order to run some functions, right? Let me give you a quick idea of what this is. So you have the AWS IoT Core platform, and you have something called a device gateway. This is kind of what helps you get your connection working with your actual IoT device. So your IoT device has to talk to something, right? So this gateway actually maintains that connection. There is something called message brokers when you talk about protocols such as MQTT, which actually helps you maintain the connection and send and receive messages between your devices. So that's what this device gateway actually takes care of. Then you have the rules engine, where you define what to do when something happens, whether something that the device does or whether you want something the device to do. So that's kind of what the rules engine is. Then you have something called the device shadow, which is kind of like an actual shadow or a ghost of the actual device. So when you perform actions, you're performing actions on the shadow, and then the shadow is going to mirror those actions on the actual device. So you're not directly performing the actions on the device, you're kind of performing actions on the shadow, then the shadow kind of mirrors the actual device. This helps you to maintain some state. For example, sometimes when the device is not reachable, it kind of helps you at least perform some actions, so that when the device comes online, it kind of gets those actions and performs them once it's online from the shadow. Then, of course, you have the topic, which is basically the subscribe and publish model, which helps you which helps you receive and send messages to your IoT device. Then, of course, you have a whole bunch of other AWS services which you can use. So the reason we are using AWS Lambda, API Gateway, and Amazon S3 is so that we can actually have a web page where we can interact with the service, right? So our web page will basically be hosted on S3, and we will have the Amazon API Gateway URL, which we're going to use to actually open up the web page. And when we perform some action on that web page, that is going to be going to Lambda, which is then going to kind of push a message or actually create some action on the topic, and then it further gets processed into the rules engine, and then you have some action taking place. Okay, so let me first show you exactly what we are talking about. Let me actually show you the device itself first. Okay, so what we are going to look at today is this ESP32 board. This is the actual microcontroller. So this is the processor which is on the board, and on the board you basically have other components, which is things like your USB controllers and several other controllers which actually help you make use of these pins that you have over here. Okay, we have the basic power pins that we are connected right now, which is this red wire. And then we have the blue wire, which is actually the ground. So this is the positive 5 volt, and this is the ground. And then you have the signal cable, which is right here, which kind of sends the signal whenever you perform an action. Now, this device is the one that actually talks to AWS IoT, okay? And all of the code is actually on this. And when we perform some action from our console, like the web page, it sends a message to this, it performs the action. And the action here being that this signal wire, this control signal wire, which is, I believe, dark brown in color, this is basically going to send an action, or this is basically going to perform an action on this item, which is basically nothing but a switch. It is literally a switch which turns on and off. I have wires that are running from the switch into the actual lights that you will see behind me. Let me quickly show you what happens when I turn the lights on and off in 1 second. So right now the device, as you can see, it's kind of on, but there's no lights anywhere else, which means the actual switch is off. Now I'm going to turn on the switch. You can actually see the lights that are there behind me, as well as what's happening here on the switch. So I'm going to perform an action, which is turning it on. As you can see, the switch turned on, as well as the other light that you see here turned on. And as you can see, the light behind me also turned on. So I'm just going to quickly show you how you can get this done, so that you can perform this yourself, right? Okay, so let's switch over. So this is the page where we are actually going to perform the action. So if I turn this on and off, like you see here behind me, the lights, I'm turning this on and off, and as you can see, it's kind of turning on and off. Now this is the one that performs the action on the AWS Lambda function, which then kind of performs the action on the device shadow. So what do we need here? In order to perform this, what we need is these are the steps that you basically need to perform. You need to add the thing in AWS IoT, the thing here basically being your ESP32 chip. Then you have to configure that with certain certificates and policies applied on it. And then you actually have to upload the code, which includes the certificates, onto your ESP32 device. Then you have to create the Lambda functions that require you to perform the actions. And of course, finally, we have the API gateway and the S3 web page. So what we're going to do here is, let me quickly kind of walk you through all of these steps. So we'll need to first go into IoT Core. So we need to first go ahead and create a policy so that we can create the certificates required. So first we go into secure and we go into policies, and there's also already a policy that I've created, but the idea here is that you create a policy, for example, as ESP32 demo. And then what you do is you go into advanced and then you set up your policy here. Now, what is the policy? I'll just show you that over here. So this is kind of the policy that we are going to use. This includes what are the permissions that the device needs. All right. Now, if this is the first time that you're doing this, I wouldn't advise you to kind of fill in all of this information. Rather, do a star, which is IoT star on the resource. Right. Now, this is going to require the region and the account ID. But as an example, you just copy this and put this in here, and you just create this, right? I'm not going to create this right now because it needs to put the account ID and the region. Okay. So once this is done, you basically need to create your device or the thing, right? So you will go to manage and you'll go to things. And I've already added one here again, but the idea here is that you create a thing. Okay. There is actually a better way to do this. If this is the first time you're doing this, we'll go to onboard and we'll go to get started, and you have the option to onboard a device over here. So let's do that and get started. Now there are several ways you can do this. This is just a guided wizard, right? Which helps you do it very quickly. And then you go to Linux and select Python, next, and then you give your thing a name. In this case, I'm just giving it this name, and I go next. And you need to download this because this has the certificates that you need to install on your ESP32 microcontroller so that it can actually talk to AWS. Otherwise, you're not going to have a secure connection. You're not going to be able to make changes, right? So you'll need to download this. I'm not going to do this right now because I've already uploaded one. Once that is done, you basically go into your things. You go into your ESP32 and you go to your certificates. And then what you do is you kind of apply the policy that you just created onto the certificates, right? So you'll go to policies and you'll go to actions. And you'll go to attach a policy, right? Simple here. Once you select attach a policy, then you will just select the policy that you need to attach and then attach that particular policy. Okay. So that's pretty much it on the console itself, because when you do the get started and onboard device, it does create a lot of things that are normally what you would have to manually do, but it kind of sets up everything for you, right? Including the topics that you're going to use for sending and receiving messages. So that's on the IoT side, right? The next part is to actually upload the code into your ESP32 device, right? Now, as far as the code is concerned, this is kind of what it looks like. Now, the first thing is the file that you get from AWS actually contains some certificates, like I mentioned, because it needs to communicate securely. So you kind of put that information in here. You have the AWS root certificate, you have the device certificate, as well as a private key that is there in the package that you downloaded when you created the AWS IoT core. You of course also need to configure your Wi-Fi credentials as well as the IoT endpoint, which you can find inside AWS IoT core. So this is the file that is going to use in order to make the connection. And this is the file that has the actions that it will perform. So the first few actions are basically subscribing to a topic and getting started and initializing the Wi-Fi, right? And once the Wi-Fi is initialized, then it starts to listen. It starts to listen for messages, right? And that's kind of what it's doing over here. It's listening to messages, and whenever we send a message or update something, it kind of performs that action. Okay. Now, once you have all of this code, you basically need to kind of upload it, which is basically this button here. If you click on it, it kind of uploads that code onto your device. Now, I've already done that, so I'm not going to redo this right now on my device. Now, once that is done, the next steps are basically to create your API gateways and the Lambda functions. So I'm not going to show you how to create the API gateway functions right now because I've already set it up and it takes it kind of is a few steps, but I'll show you one that is already set up, right? So let me just open that up quickly. Okay, so I have the APIs over here, which is the IoT Lamp API. Let me just switch over 1 second. Okay, so here's the API that's already set up, right? So you have the AWS IoT Lamp API. This has the shadow state that you're going to create as a resource. And then you have the get option and the post option, right? Now in the get over here, you can see that in the method request over here right now, it is, okay, 1 second. If I go to post, sorry, in the get request, if you see the integration, you can see that the integration is with Lambda function, right? And there is a particular Lambda function that it's actually going to invoke when I try to get the information. Same with the post, you can see that it is integrated with a Lambda function. And what are those Lambda functions? I'll just show that to you as well. So there are two functions, which is it checks the status, because if you see on this page, I can check the status here, right? So when I hit check status, it says it's on, and as you can see, it's actually on right now. And if I turn it off, as you can see, it updates the status. So it's actually checking the shadow, not the actual device. But anyways, the shadow gets updated. So these are the two functions. One is to actually update. So when I click the button to turn it on and off, it's actually performing this Lambda function. And when I check the status, it's basically doing this, right? So the update function, this is basically the code for the update function. I will show you where to get all of this, which is, the update, the shadow status check, as well as the update function, right? And once we have these integrations done, and we have the file, which is the HTML file, which is basically this file that is uploaded into the S3 bucket. And whenever I use the API gateway URL, it is basically going to open up the HTML page on S3. And if I check the status right now, it's off. And as you can see, I just turn it on, again, off and on. Okay. So where can you find this? You can actually find this. I'll be posting the link for you, but basically there is a workshop which you can use on the AWS documentation, which is the using ESP32, right? So these steps are a bit, here and there, but if you're doing this for the first time, this is what you follow. You actually go into Get Started Guide and you follow this step by step. Now, there are other things that you can do, which is creating something called an IoT button, where, it's basically a touch button. Let me just show that to you. It's basically kind of a touch sensor that you can use, right? But what we are doing is this one, so you can actually find all of the steps that I just mentioned over here on this one. All right. What I want to do is, if there is anyone who's actually listening in right now, I'd like to give you this link so that you can actually try pressing this link and see if it works for you, and see if you can turn the lights on and off for me right over here, right? So if you are in the group, the WhatsApp group, please ping me, or if you're also in the Discord chat, just ping me and I'll try to give you this link so that you can perform the function. For everyone else, let me quickly ask if there's any questions that you have. If you have any questions, please go ahead and post them in the chat. Okay, so no questions so far. If you do want to try this out, which is turn off the lights on and off over here, I'll try to give you the link on the WhatsApp group, and I'll just show you live when that happens. So I hope this session has been informative for you. We do have a bigger or longer 1 hour session that is actually being conducted by one of the other AWS user groups, which the link I will be posting in the information for the video. So do have a look at it after an hour or so. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this session. If you do have any questions, please drop it on our chat groups, which is on Discord as well as in the meetup, or even on our Facebook group. I hope to see you in the next session for 15-minute Fridays. We'll keep you posted on what the topics are. See you soon, and thank you.